Okay, so now there's some good ways to use the manipulators, and there's some not so good ways to use manipulators. Another shortcut key that I failed to mention that will be good when you're modeling, especially, is if you want to frame your screen, like everything you're working on, if you want to frame all of it together, just press A on your keyboard. Okay? If you want to frame only what you have selected, then you can press F on your keyboard. Okay. Now with the selection tool, there's a few ways you can use this. You can do your normal, don't hold down any keyboard keys, drag and select. You can click to select. You should know that there is a difference. In this particular case, I have a display up, a heads-up display right now showing me components to showing me information about this particular model. Right now it says verts. I have one selected, and there's 382 in this particular model. If I click to select, I will only get one vertice, but I happen to know that I'm seeing all the way through a sphere right now. Right? Okay? So if I drag and select, I will get two vertices. I'm going to get the one that's on the front side of the object and the one that's on the back side of the object. So that's important to take note of. Also, if I have a selection, I can add to that selection by holding down Control and Shift. And then if I overlap something that I have previously selected, then it will not remove that portion of the selection. If I hold down Shift to add to a selection, then it's going to remove the stuff that was already selected and select what wasn't selected. If I hold down Control, it's just going to reduce the selection. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of your selection tool. Those same things apply to the lasso select. Okay, now moving on to the translate tool. So with the translate tool, at first it seems really basic. You can grab these handles and move your object along that particular axis. So that was moved along the z-axis. The z is always blue in Maya. The y, or up and down, is always green, and x is always left to right. Sorry, my screen's bugging out because I don't have all my settings done quite right. Okay, so now what if I want to move in all three axes at the same time, which I don't recommend. I need to emphasize this. I do not recommend you doing this. It's only helpful if you're making really small movements. But you can click in the center of that box, and then you can move this object in all three axes. The problem with translating objects this way is that it does it in relative to the view of your camera, and so therefore it becomes unpredictable. If you would need to move things precisely, then you'll need to use these handles. More commonly, You can move in 2 axes at the same time by holding down Control and clicking the handle that you don't want to move it in. And now when I move it, it gets closer to the camera or further away. Let me choose a better view for that. Okay, so I'm only moving in 2 axes, the X and the Z. To do the same thing this way. And the same thing here. You'll also notice that if I do that, the box that's in the center of the translate manipulator changes its shape a little bit. It draws the square in the center in alignment with the plane that you can move it on. You currently can move the object on by clicking in the center. Okay. Now, this is the most complicated of all the manipulators, even though it's so simple. But knowing these little tricks is going to make it fast. Now, let's say you need to move it a precise amount. If you click a handle, you'll notice that when I click the Translate X handle, it turned from red into yellow. That means it's the active handle. And having an active handle is nice, because then if you hold down, there's some shortcut keys on your keyboard to help you move. If you hold down X on your keyboard, it'll allow you to snap the movement of this object to a certain grid space. So I'll show you what that means. We have this grid here, and if I hold down X and click next to a point on the grid, then it's going to move my object to that grid point. But it's only going to do it in the X axis because that's the handle I have active. If I want it to move to a grid point in all axes, then I click in the center of the manipulator to deactivate any one specific handle, and I can hold down X and then middle mouse click, and it will snap the ball to that location on the grid. That's going to be really handy because there's also a shortcut for vertices. So to do that, let me create another object, scale it, now if I hold down V, you'll notice that the cursor in the center of the translate manipulator turns to a circle. See that? Okay. What's nice about this is I don't have to click on this manipulator at all. I can just hold down V and middle mouse click next to a vertice that I want that object to move to, and it's going to snap right to it. Okay, it's a whole lot faster than trying to guide it there with the manipulator. So again, hold down V, middle mouse click, and it moves to the closest vertice. So if I hold down V and hold down the middle mouse button, and it's going to continue to move that object to the closest vertice in the scene. There's one other thing that may be handy. If I create a curve real quick, I can hold down C on my keyboard and do that exact same method of movement by holding down C and then clicking on a curve. And then it's going to stay on that curve. Okay, now we'll only do that in the axes you have selected if you have one selected. If you don't, then it's going to do it in all axes. Okay, you'll have to experiment with that to really understand it. Okay, now